I'm gonna make a quick video here about downwinding, just to kind of share what I've learned so far, kind of how I got, I guess, proficient at it, and kind of the step-by-step process that helped me, get one to the next. So this is going to be super crude because I'm doing it a bit in a rush, and then headed out of town. So, but hopefully it's helpful. So here we go. Right after I made my board, I went out and tried to do a long downwinder, well, 4.5 miles or so, and I got stuck because I couldn't even stand on the thing. And so the first thing I did when I got out to the flat water to practice was I grabbed my paddle and my board, and I went out on my knees. And from my knees to getting on my feet on the flat water was incredibly hard. And so I thought to myself, well, if I can't even get to my feet, there's no way I can paddle. And so my first goal was to be able to stand on the board in the gorge, in the bumps. So what I did on the flat water when I locally here in Spokane is I grabbed my paddle and I was on my knees with, my knees and then my fists. And so this is just how I do it. There's a lot of different techniques on getting up, but I think it's important to be up on your feet, moving slowly, being able to gauge which bump you want to try to catch. And the only way to do that is to get to your feet, you know, at 0 miles per hour, right? So what I did is I made sure that both of my hands stayed on my paddle. And so I had my knuckles on the board and my knees on the board, and I popped up to my feet and then slid my hand to the handle and got the blade in the water as quick as possible. And I'm doing that because I want the least amount of time where I am not perfectly able to balance. So I'm able to balance with my knuckles and my knees, and I'm able to balance when I have the paddle in the water and I have my feet set. So I did, like, I don't know, 50 pop-ups or something like that, just getting to my feet. It was a little silly, but I wasn't good at it yet. I was falling all over the place, but I want to make it the quickest and smoothest way to just to get to my feet and get the paddle in the water so I can brace. The paddle in the water is key. It's your third leg, as Ben always talks about. It's the third leg. You got to get in there to brace it. So then once I had done a bunch of those, I needed to learn how to paddle in a straight line. And what I ended up figuring out was, I know that there's a million videos out there, but what worked for me was, if this is the board, okay, and I paddle on this side because I'm goofy. So if this is the board, what I did with my paddle is I reached out front diagonally and I paddled in, like that. Reach way out front and diagonally out and paddled in. Now, there's other ways to do it. People say to do this thing at the end. I can't do that. I don't know how people can concentrate on that when they're trying to push forward. So I reached out diagonally and brought it toward my feet and not past my feet. And once the second you go past your feet is when you start to turn the board that way. So paddling in a straight line, however you're going to do it, but that's, step two. Step one, getting onto the board, blade in the water. Step two, paddling in a straight line. Then you're trying to paddle fast, right? Because the first thing you want to do when you're out there is you want to get some speed going before you start hopping up and down. And so I started practicing reaching my paddle way out in front of me and then lightly with my feet pulling the board underneath of me. And so I fell forward a ton of times because I'm reaching way out and then bringing my feet in front of me. And sometimes my feet didn't make it in front of me. This is good for two things. Number one, technique of unweighting the board. Your weight then becomes on the paddle blade and you kind of jump a little bit. But mainly you're out front and you're unweighting, and then you're pulling the board with your feet, sliding the board forward. Jeremy Riggs has a great video on this. And so that's number one, you're learning that technique. But number two, it's really challenging to balance like that, even in flat water, to balance like that and have several strokes of you reaching way out in front and gaining speed. You will naturally start hopping if you are reaching way out and trying to bring the board underneath you. And so you do a few strokes to get speed, And then you reach even farther out in front and farther out in front. And what ends up happening is you unweight the board, so there's less pressure on the foil, which means the foil is able to pop up a little bit. And then as far as the flat water pop up, I've only done a couple of those, but what I've noticed is you just want to try to be light on your feet, put all your weight somewhere else, and that ends up being on the paddle for me. And so you're reaching out and you're trying to be light on your feet. What happens is you end up slapping the board against the water way more times than I had expected. But every time you slap the board, you're actually getting one step closer to being completely off the water. So again, flat water paddle ups are I'm just not good at it. But that's how I was able to finally paddle up that Takuma 1440. So there's that. Then the next step, once you're standing comfortably, you're paddling in a straight line, and then you are getting that paddle technique of reaching way out in front of you and having the feet, scooting your feet forward, scooting that board underneath you. That's when I think it's time to get out. I mean, well, it's always time to get out in the bumps because it's always good practice for your balance. But getting into the bump, now you got to choose the right bump. The last time I was out, I might have changed my mind on this, but up until the last time, I'm in the water and there's a great YouTube video by Dave Kalama. I think it's on Foil Tomo or Foil Japan or Go Foil Japan. That account, you can look that up, but it's about what the paddle does in the water. He keeps the paddle in the water. So he reaches out this is not when he's actually up and going. This is when you're waiting for a bump. You pull yourself forward slightly and then you keep the paddle in the water on the way back and you twist it again, paddle it forward and then twist it and bring it back. But you keep the paddle in the water because it's hard to balance. And so that way you're ready at any moment to get up and go. So you're going, and what I do is I do not look back. I might look back when I'm sitting out there resting. And if I see, some bumps really close to me and they look good, then I'll get to my feet because those will probably still be good bumps by the time they get to me. But if those bumps are 20 feet away or 30 feet back, they may not be bumps by the time they get to you. And we'll talk about the underwater energy. And I'm not sure exactly how that works, but as those bumps when they're close to you, I can turn around, hop up real fast and be ready for a good bump. What's a good bump? For me, a good bump is one that you're going to feel the energy go up. Like I'm looking forward. I'm going to feel a bump come up under me, and it might be a good bump, but you don't want to take the first one most of the time. You feel that good bump, you're like, oh man, that might have been a good one. And then if the second one is also good, what I do is I reach my paddle out and I grab that bump. Like I grab the top of I reach out. Now I'm on the back of the bump, but I'm reaching out and grabbing the peak of that bump. And I'm saying, wait up, like you're trying to grab it and say, no, I want to come along, right? And so I told myself for a long time, chop, 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 then pop, pop, pop. So the first three chops are a quick acceleration, chop, chop, chop. And then after those first three, which I'm reaching way out for those two, then instead of focusing on speed with those first chops, now I'm focusing on unweighting the board and popping up the board. Because once you can get the board popped up on that energy, now it's going fast enough to keep up with that bump. Now, the reason why you don't want to take the first one is because you want at least two good bumps in front of you, because it takes 3 or 4 seconds to get up on foil and going. And by the time those 3 or 4 seconds are over, the two bumps are now just one bump and maybe no bumps because they disappear quickly. And I'll illustrate that a little bit later on. So that's how I choose the right bump. It's basically, you're feeling the bumps doing this, right? This is the board and you're feeling them do this and you feel a big one. And it's like, whoa, that was a good one. If you feel a second one, whoa, and it pushes you forward like that, right about here is where you want to reach out with your paddle and grab the top of that bump and chop, 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 pop, 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 and you're on your way. So that's a basic explanation of how I choose the bumps. Then once you're up on foil, Do a few extra paddle strokes, but do it with good form with your back straight, or you'll pull your back like I did at Coeur d'Alene a month ago. Keep that back straight, bend the knees, and give yourself a few more strokes so that you can get up to speed. And speed is at the point where you can basically pump and not feel like you're going to fall over. So a few extra paddle strokes. And then while these last few steps are going on, so we've got, 5 steps here basically, while steps 4 and 5 are, choosing the bump and those extra paddle strokes. When you're choosing that bump, your eyes are already up watching which bump you're going to catch. And by catch, I mean get pulled by, that you're going to be behind so that it pulls you forward. So, um, so then once you're up, you always want to be high on the mast. That gives you the most amount of glide and the most amount of power with the wave. You want straight legs as much as you can while still being balanced, because you don't want to use up that energy necessarily. And then for me, the second I'm up and starting to read, I put the paddle on my back with a strap. It's a bike inner tube. And I just rely on my reading and pump and a little bit of pumping, not a lot of pumping, but just mainly reading. And if I really have to pump, then I'll pump. Most of the guys I see keep the paddle in their hand. Dave Kalama once said on a podcast, he's like, ditch the paddle, put the paddle on your back, whatever. Don't use the paddle. Just learn to pump and get to where you need to go. So I'm a big fan of Dave Kalama. So that's what I do. And I like it. I like to have my hands free when I surf. I'm not a sup foiler or sup surfer. Some of you are. So keep that paddle in your hand if you like, and you can do those sup turns with the paddle and stuff. I just haven't gotten into that. So, um, what you're gonna, what you might fall into a trap of is not reading, but pumping the whole way. Now that's a really tiring way to do a downwinder. You can pump your way all the way down the river, but what's more fun for me is the puzzle. It's the maze. You're in a maze. You're in a chaotic, situation of waves, which you're trying to make sense of. And that's what I want to mainly focus on today. So, um, but you want to pump as little as possible. Once you're up, you don't want to be pumping at all. And I've gotten to the point where I'm, really, I mean, very few times out there do I have to pump if it's a good day. That race day, like about a month ago, that Rob from Montana was out there. I think Gwen was in that race. It was the first one I didn't make the race, but I was out there afterwards. I'm not sure if I pumped at all. Like it was just there were so many bumps and so much energy. I was actually avoiding the biggest bumps because I was like, no, that's scary. Also found out that I forgot to tighten my screws on my foil into that. Anyway, that's beside the point. So, um, okay, so wave energy. So the science of the wave. So this is into as far as reading the bumps. How do we read the bumps? How do we know where to go? There's a really great YouTube video on this, and I'll put the link to that video in the in the notes of this video. But in a nutshell, this wave science YouTube video, it's like an hour long. So I love this type of stuff. But there's all sorts of energy underneath the water. And then of course there's the energy you see that's above the water. The main difference is the energy above the water is gravity driven, and the energy below the water is energy that has been generated from the wind and it's transferred into the water. So I made a quick little video to show kind of the way I look at bumps. The main thing about reading bumps is that you are following bumps. The bump is like this analogy worked for James, but the bump is like a ski boat. And so you want the power that boat, you want that boat in front of you, and you've got the tow rope, right? And it's an imaginary tow rope anywhere from, I guess, from the peak of the bump that you're following. It could be as far as let's say maybe as close as like 8 feet in front of you, maybe 6 feet in front of you, to as far as like, I don't know, 25 feet in front of you, depending on the size of the bump. If it's a really tiny bump, it's going to be you're going to be right behind it. If it's a large bump and it's got a big old trough like this, here's the bump, you're going to be back here. Okay. When you're reading bikes, you never ever want to be thinking about the bump you're on. I never see the bump that I'm on when I'm downwinding. I just look at the bumps in front of me or the bump that I'm following. And obviously, I'm looking for the next bump or whatever. So the key is you're behind the bumps, you're following the bumps, you're holding onto that tow rope, and the bump is the boat that's pulling you. You're not thinking about, so you're in the trough? No, you're not in the trough. You'll find the sweet spot of where you want to be. You're going to be in any number of places. You might even be on the top of the bump behind it, maybe even, who knows? But you're still using in your brain, in my brain, I'm thinking I'm still using the energy of the bump in front of me. Now, can you ride a bump right on the front side of it? You see the first bump you see, and you're like, oh, I'm going to go ride that. Yes, you can ride that, but that bump is going to disappear. And I made a short, really primitive video I'll show right now for that.
Yep.
All right, so let's say you're winging and you see 3 big bumps. You're like, whoa, those are great bumps. Awesome. So you see this first one. You're going to be tempted to want to take off here, but you're not going to want to do that. And I'll explain why in just a moment. Let's say you see another one behind that. Sweet, go up over that one too. When you get to the last bump in the wave train, and in this case it's just a 3-wave train, which is kind of the most common that I see is 3. You get back here and there's nothing here, but there is. And so what you want to do is you want to be here. There we are, there's my artwork. You want to be right here behind the last bump of the train. And this is why. What is this big thing? Well, there's a really, really good hour-long video on how waves work that I watched, and it was really, really helpful in understanding what's going on under the water as opposed to what's above the water. The energy below the water has been built from all of the wind power, right? The wind hits the top, makes all these bumps, right? And then there's a bunch of energy below that happens because of that wind, right? There's also energy above it. Now, the energy above the surface of the water is mainly gravity driven, and it ends up that those bumps that we can see above the water are actually moving faster than the energy below it. This is our energy below the water. That's what this guy is symbolizing. So what happens in reality is the energy above the water goes faster than the energy below the water line. And so as you go, we'll just go ahead and follow me with the camera here. They're both moving forward, but one is moving at a faster pace. The top is moving faster because of gravity. So here's what happens in reality then. You're back here surfing, you're back here foiling behind this last wave. Okay, here's the foil and my little artwork. And here's the energy, right? Now this is energy too. These guys have energy, and there's no denying that, obviously. So what happens is, as this bump passes the energy below it, right, this bump disappears because it gets canceled out. So now we're down to 2 bumps. You're still foiling back here. You're still good, right? Energy keeps going. One more bump. Now this guy's gone. Now you're left with 1 bump. This is the time to be looking, or even before that, to be looking where you're going to go next, where you're going to turn, so that you can get behind a few more bumps, right? Once this energy passes here, now this bump is gone and you're in the flats. Now, yes, this energy is here, but don't think of it as up or down. Again, that video is a much better explanation. But that's basically how a wave train works and where you want to be on foil when you're on one of those wave trains. So the wave science thing, you got to check that out. It's awesome. Choosing bumps, obviously bigger is better. Really, it is. And when the wind is really, really strong, that's the best time to learn how to read bumps, because you're going to feel the energy the most. If you're on like Sprague or something where they're just basically like, I would just call them more like big ripples more than actually waves, because you can't get behind a bump on Sprague and ride it for a long time without pumping. And so, I mean, I tried. Maybe you can with the right foil. I don't have foils that'll do that. So I was just constantly pumping when I was on Sprague, trying to downwind those bumps on a really, really heavy wind day. So there's just not a lot of energy, and that's because it's so shallow and the energy below can't build up as much in Sprague. Now, maybe down the lake, who knows? Maybe it a little bit farther down. I don't know. Who knows? But you want to, the energy is behind it when the water is deep enough. And so like the deeper the water, the more energy, the more power, the bigger the bumps. Ocean, right? Ponderay, where Joe went. But so that's, so there you go. So then as far as where to be on the bump, like I said, you're getting pulled by that boat. It's a big boat and you're behind it. You're likely on a bump as well. I mean, again, I never look back. You're likely on a bump, but I don't pay attention to that at all. I'm just like, I'm on that bump right there. I mean, sometimes if I do see three bumps ahead of me, then I'll start surfing the bump I'm on because I know it's gonna last. So I'll try some cutbacks and stuff, and it's lots of fun. So, but once you're on a good bump, you're going to be looking left and left forward, right forward, and maybe even left back and right back for, depending on how fast your foil is and depending on how fast the bumps are. Smaller the bump, slower the bump. Bigger the bump, faster the bump. So, all right, I'm going to go to these videos because I think it'll be helpful to watch. So this first one is a video from Rufus Downwinder. And let me share my screen. Here we are. I see this ridge right here. I call them ridges mainly because I think, actually at the hatchery, it's more like bumps because they're more like triangles in my opinion. But in the Rufus run and the Arlington, the Blaylock run, there are a lot of it's mainly I'm looking for mountain ridges, mountain ranges with ridges on the top. I'm looking for those ridges because that's the boat. That's the bump I want to follow. So here we go. All right, so this is a run from a while ago, I guess about a year ago, maybe a year and a half. So here goes. Right off the bat, if you can see this ridge right here, that's what I'm looking at. And I'm going to try to slip right in behind it, right behind it. Here it is. I'm right behind it. I see another one up there. I'll probably chase it. This ridge is just going to continue, just gliding right now, no pumping. Now I'm looking around because there's just one bump left. No, there's one other one in front, but I see this, so I'm going to head that way. Here's a ridge. Just want to make sure you can see these. So these look a lot bigger in person than they do on the video. They kind of vanish in the video. But here it is. I'm still coasting, haven't pumped yet. I might have to pump over this little guy. Looks like I pumped a little tap here to get behind. Oh, sorry. Change the screen. Okay, here's another one right here. I'm right behind it. I'm following it. I see it's continuing over here. I can go left, see it. I'm looking. I'm following this one right here. So I'm good. That one's pulling me along. And now I'm going to get somewhere. So I'm going to pump a little bit. Looks like I stalled a little bit. No, I'm going to get over a little bump here. Even these tiny ones you see right here, those are actually much bigger in person. So I'm going to get over a little bump here so I can follow this guy. There was a little tap there. There it is. And I'm following this ridge now. So as I'm looking this way, I've got a ridge here and a ridge here and a ridge here and a ridge here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll either end up going right behind this guy or right behind this guy, kind of going off the back here. Let's see what happens. Yeah, I'm going to follow that one. And so, sorry, but this trip I was trying to work on keeping my shoulders back when I was turning. So my hand's in a funny position as I'm riding. But each time I saw that there were 3 or 4 bumps and I was ready to surf, I put it on me so that I could, because I'm trying to improve my form. So, when there's 4 in front of you, remember from the little video that means that you've got lots of time on the bump that you're on before you have to get to another bump. So that's when I'm like, ooh, it's time to surf. So that's what I do here. So I'm following that bump. You can see it still. I'm on a bump. And these bumps are, again, the energy is slower. So these bumps are ending up behind me. You see it right there. But I still have a bump or two in front of me. I'm not quite looking yet. Like I said, the funny hand position. But I still got that bump in front of me because I had that long wave train. Now I might be starting to look. Yeah, I'm looking around. All right, where am I going to go? So there's a bump here. Looks like I still got a big wave train here. 1, 2. So I'm just going to coast. I'll probably need to pump a little bit here. Yep. Watch what I'm doing here. Here we are. Now here we are. 2 bumps. 1, 2. 1, 2 right there. Pump over this little guy so I can get behind here. There we are. That ridge right there. Nice top turn there. Then I've got a ridge here and a ridge here. I'm going to probably follow this guy here. There you go. Okay, let me grab another one here. Here goes. And I see ridges here. Much bigger in person. Again, they're going to look much bigger in person. But I'm following this. I'm going to staying behind it. Now I'm not sure what to do. There's a bump here and a bump here. I got to pump over here, over this little bump, and get so I'm behind this guy. So lots of pumping here so I can get behind this bump and this ridge. Ooh, there's a good thing over there to the left. So I'll probably go to that. And here we are. There's a bump. And that ridge continues. Ooh, this is flats, but there's something here. So I'm going to pump. I made a bad decision there. So now I'm going to have to pump because I made the wrong call. I got to pump over this little bump so I can get behind this ridge. A lot of pumping. Here we are behind that one. Trying to find something. That time I didn't see anything, so I turned right and boom, there it is. One of the things that I'll do is I'll just, as I'm going, I'll end up, if I don't see anything in front of me as I'm going left, then I'll just turn right and hopefully something's over there. And 9 times out of 10, something's there. You just got to pick and go. You can't hesitate. If you sit there and you go, I don't know, and then you're going to drop. If you just go, I'm going right, and you just go, it's a lot better than hesitating like that. So I see a bump here. I got to get over this little hump, so I might have to pump to there. No, it looks like I had enough speed, so that was fine. Here I am with a ridge. I'm going to follow this ridge. There's 2 right there, so that looks good. I might just keep going straight this way to the left. Notice I'm never going straight down the river. I'm always going left or right. That's so that I can stay behind my little boat here with my ski rope, right? Now, look, everything's dissipating. What am I going to do? I'll turn right, see what happens. And I see something right here. I'll get behind it. And then there's something here, but I got to pump over to it. So I pumped a few times. Still looking kind of thin, but ooh, look what's developing. I've got right here. Check this out. Here's 1, 2, 3. Check it out. Here we are. Lots of energy here. So, oh, there we are. So I turned it around because it's time to surf because I saw lots of bumps. So then let me grab one more here, and I'll turn the volume up on this one because I'm actually narrating as I go. All right. And as I'm narrating here, each time I point, I'm like this from like here to here. I'm a bit low. So if I point here, I really mean here. If I point here, I really mean here. If I point here, I mean here. Here we go. Big bump right here. I'm going to go back to that one right here. Right there. And then it looks like there's forming over here on the left. Yep. So I'm just going to run my cursor over the bumps when I see them. And especially when I point, I'll try to point out exactly where I'm talking about. Here in front of me, I can go all day on this one. I see a ridge here, a little split here, but it's still enough power. Gotta go back to where I was over here. There's another ridge right here. Right now I've got this one and this one, so I know there's going to be power for a little while. Ridge right there. Right there, I'm gonna pump over this little guy.
And I see a few in the distance right in front of this one. So
that whitewash you saw, that's usually at the top of a big bump. And so if I see that off in the distance, not too far, but just, 1, 2, 3 bumps ahead, I know that I want to go that direction because it's going to have energy for a while.
Whitewash up there, it's going to make a really big wave right here. I'm going to surf this one. You see whitewash there, more ridges. Here's a ridge right in front of me. I'm going to get over this little guy to get over those ridges. See that whitewash there?
Right now there's 1, 2, 3.
That's going to be a big wave. Now there's a big ridge right here. Follow it. I'm going to turn back. I think I saw one over to the right. There's one to the right here. Follow that one. I'm going to go off the back of this guy. Follow this one. A little less energy, but there's just a ridge here. Go. Still doing okay. There's a couple ahead here, so I know.
So right now there's a softer bump here, a much better bump here, and what that means is this one is about to look like that. This one's like a steeper one. It's going to break. And then this one is going to develop into that. And then honestly, there's going to be one behind where I am that's going to do the same thing.
So this is going to develop here. Bump a little bit.
There it is.
And there it is. It develops right there. So lots of big ridge right here. Here it goes there. Still forming right there, a little whitewash. That's nice. I'm going to follow that guy. Come back this way. Oh, don't see anything. So I'm going to go back. There's a big wave here. I want to get behind it though.
So right there, I saw 1, 2. This looks small in the video. It's much bigger in person, but I saw that one, but I'm like, ooh, I want to get behind that one. Even though there's 1, 2, I don't want to go here. It'll be fine, but I got to pump to get there. But if I just stall and go right, I'll get behind this. And so that's what I'm doing there, is just getting behind it.
I'm going to get behind it. There, now I'm behind it. Now I'll be in the power. There's a ridge there. 2 right there ahead. I'm going to come back and follow those.
Right now, this one is going to develop because look, it's breaking right there. This one's going to break in like 3 seconds.
There's a ridge here. Follow that bump.
There, it broke.
Still developing, get over a little bit here. Still real high on it. Now there's this big ridge right along there.
So the big ridge I'm seeing is right all there. There's a big trough right here. And there's a ridge that goes all the way along here. I'm just going to follow that.
I'm going to follow that forever. Just sit here and go. Ooh, grass.
Here's a ridge.
And then a ridge here. I'm going to come off the back.
Yep.
Follow it. Still just gliding all the way. I'm staying high on the bump. And then
I'll probably have to pump a little bit over this section in order to get to this ridge.
see more ridge here, more bumps.
Nope, didn't have to pump. I had speed going in it. That's the other thing. The second you peel off of a wave, you want to make sure that you're going fast. You want to peel off with speed so you can have that trajectory.